So I wanted to talk about what Docker is. So what we're going to do here is just look at their website where it says what is Docker, and I'll kind of talk more about what they say. So the first thing to know is that Docker is a wrapper around Linux containers. And of course that begs the question, what is a container? So a container is very different from a virtual machine, which is kind of what a container is compared against the most. So let's actually scroll down here a bit to compare containers and virtual machines. So on the left here we have a virtual machine setup, and on the right, a container-based setup. So a virtual machine here on the left is actually a tiny little computer run on your computer. So you can see here we have this hypervisor layer, and this helps us lie to our virtual machines. In other words, what we do is kind of set up the matrix for computers. Your virtual machine thinks it's an entire computer, and it thinks it has real hardware. Now that's also kind of heavy because it has to do everything a computer has to do, which takes up a lot of RAM and takes up a lot of memory. Each virtual machine contains an entire computer complete with the operating system and any system and binaries needed. Now a container, on the other hand, shares the underlying Linux kernel. And what that means is that there isn't this extra layer of an entire computer sitting somewhere on your computer so it can run. In other words, a Linux container contains just enough to make it what it needs to be. So if we have an Ubuntu container, it can rest on top of my Linux system, even if that Linux system is CoreOS or CentOS or Red Hat or whatever. The container will share the kernel. It'll use the kernel that already exists on that Linux system, and on top of it, it'll build whatever it needs to build in order for it to be Ubuntu. So a virtual machine is a complete computer, a complete server. It runs things like SSH, networking, cron, syslog, all that kind of good stuff. A container will typically only run one process. Of course, that process can start other processes, so it's possible to run a few things in a container. But typically, even if you do that, it will only be things that are related, like Nginx and PHP FPM. So let's actually see an example of that. Here I'm on my Macintosh, I have Docker installed, and I'm going to run a new container. I'm going to do the --rm flag so that it deletes the container here after I run it. I'm going to do the -v flag to share a volume, so I'm sharing the current directory, which has an index.html file, with the containers var_dub HTML directory. I'm going to share port 80 to my host, to this Macintosh, with the port 80 inside of the container, and I'm just going to run the process nginx. I'm actually running the container named nginx, and that container, in turn, is running a process called nginx. Alright, this is actually running. So let's go to my browser here, and I'll open this up and go to localhost port 80, and I get the website hello shipping docker, and that's actually the website here. And here we can actually see the log output of nginx from those HTTP requests. Now if I cancel that, and I'll list out this directory, we see we have index.html, and that's just the output we saw to the browser. So here you can see that I ran a container, and that container was called nginx, and I just ran the process nginx. All it did was run a single process. It's not doing anything else. And that, in a nutshell, is what a container is. It's a very lightweight server, and its job is just to be the minimal amount it needs to be to run one or a few processes.